Hey, welcome to the podcast. This is The Surge Effect, and I'm your host, Mike Surge. This podcast will be talking about anything and everything, life in general to current events and past events, and all things about this beautiful and wonderful world that we live in. And this podcast, well, it'll probably have an effect on you.
Well, hello again, and welcome to another episode of The Surge Effect. Before we get started today, I just want to mention a couple of the sponsors, and then we'll get into today's podcast. We're going to be talking about the $54 million scandal, the Arrive scam app that was created by the Liberals and pushed upon the Canadian citizens to get back and forth across the border and to leave our own country during COVID. Anyway, before we get started, here's my sponsors. First sponsor is Love My Legs, Owen Sound Grey Bruce. Click on their link below, head on over to their Facebook page, and check out what they have to offer. They have 3 different styles of waistbands, and they are the only lifetime guarantee in the business. They have all kinds of leggings to choose from. Head on over to check them out. Our second sponsor is He-Shirts, She-Shirts. So head on over to he-shirts-she-shirts.ca. Click on their link in the description below and see what they have to offer over on their webpage. They are more than just a t-shirt company. They have all kinds of clothing that you can purchase. All right, let's get into today's podcast. So today's podcast has to do with the Arrive Can app. If you haven't heard of it, that was a thing that Canadians had to sign up for and use their passport and show that they had proof of vaccination and all that stuff. Well, the Liberal government, they ended up paying $54 million of tax dollars for this app. Kind of crazy, if you ask me. So let's get into the first video. This is a guy by the name of Brock, Larry Brock. He's an amazing dude, and he used to be a prosecutor, and he's an MP for the PC party. And I'm going to play a few videos of his. Gives you an idea of what this Arrive Can app's all about, and this other scandal by the Liberals. This number 2, just the last little while alone. There's just so many of them, it's ridiculous. They have to go. It's time for these Liberals to go. But anyway, here is Larry Brock. He is just asking a few questions here. He's just, he's doing Larry. Here we go.
Your office, you in particular, found out that the RCMP is investigating the contracts under the $54 million Arrive Can app, not by the Government of Canada itself, but from reading the Globe and Mail story.
Yes, despite my staff being in auditing all of the departments in this audit, management had not informed me that they had referred a contracting matter, which involved many common players that we are looking at, to the RCMP. The morning that the newspaper article was released, senior management did reach out to my office, and my team has been in contact with them and in continuous dialogue since then.
So, to get that straight, they found out about this through the Globe and Mail. Think about that. They found out about it through the Globe and Mail. That is crazy. Like, what kind of a system do they have set up? So here's Larry Brock once again. He's talking about the Arrive scam app.
It's abundantly clear that for close to 4 years that the RCMP, who claims in a newspaper report that they conducted the most thorough and comprehensive and fair assessment of all the evidence, only interviewed 3 people. Were you aware of that, sir?
Yes, that's what the records show.
And the reason I'm asking these questions, sir, is because the NDP Liberal Coalition actually shut down an ethics committee yesterday to prevent the RCMP commissioner from testifying on very important details as to how they legally concluded that they lacked the reasonable and probable grounds to arrest Justin Trudeau for obstruction of justice. So I want to harken back to your legal career, Mr. Conacher, and think about the evidence that Canadians did hear, that we as parliamentarians heard, but more importantly, the evidence the RCMP heard. The evidence the RCMP heard was the direct testimony of our former first ever Indigenous Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould, who kept incredible detailed notes and also recorded conversations. So I want you to factor that in, and also factor in our former ethics commissioner, Mr. Dion, who concluded that the Prime Minister, with the support of friends and other members of Cabinet and the Prime Minister's office, conducted a series of overt, direct acts attempting to influence the decision of Jody Wilson-Raybould. And you know, sir, that under the Criminal Code, under Section 139, the actual obstruction need not take place, that you could be found guilty just with an attempt. Is that fair?
Yes, attempt is covered.
Right. So do you find it rather curious that the RCMP, after 4 years interviewing a sum total of 3 individuals, that the ethics commissioner actually quadrupled, I think they interviewed 16 to 17 witnesses, collapsed the house of cards and claimed that there was no corrupt intent on behalf of the Prime Minister? Were you aware of that phrase that the RCMP used?
Yes, that's in the records.
Agree with me, sir, that a corrupt intent is not an essential ingredient to the mens rea requirement under Section 139. In fact, all you need to prove is it criminalizes deliberate acts which seek to obstruct, interfere, or hinder the pursuit of justice. And in this case, the pursuit of justice is Jody Wilson-Raybould had the courage to say, no, Mr. Prime Minister, you are not going to influence me, and I'm not going to give a remediation agreement to a corporate entity in Quebec that has some serious criminal charges. So you can understand and appreciate why
Mr. Brock,
you can understand and appreciate why we wanted to hear from the Commissioner. Would you agree?
Yes.
Thank you.
So there you go in a nutshell. And that's actually why our Attorney General, that's why Trudeau fired her. She was fired because of those things that popped up. So this is Brock here. He's reminding not just Trudeau, but people that are listening to these hearings, basically how serious this is.
That you were successful, sir, through an ATIP of receiving some 1,815 pages of RCMP records with respect to, quote unquote, their assessment as opposed to investigation. We now know that there are well over 2,000 pages that have yet to be released to you. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
And quite frankly, sir, with my legal background over 30 years, I have prosecuted multiple homicides that actually had less disclosure than obstruction of justice. All criminal code offenses are serious. This one in particular is very serious. It's a hybrid offense. And if convicted by indictment, that individual would go to prison. So I appreciate the seriousness by which you conducted yourself, sir, on behalf of Canadians.
So that's how serious this is, and these guys are doing a great job trying to get the word out, trying to get the information out, and I think they're doing a great job. So here is an MP. This fellow's name is Garnet Genius, and here's some of the questions that he asks. It's a few minutes long, but well worth a listen. Here you go.
This scandal is fairly simple for the public to understand. You've got 2 people who run a company with 0 other employees. They get hired by the government. They do no IT work. They subcontract the work, and they get a big cut for themselves, over $11 million on ArriveCan alone. The government chose, for some reason, to hire these 2 middlemen who did no IT work, to then hire someone else, and they got over $11 million in the process. And so it's frustrating to hear, you're talking a lot about processes and procedures and how do we tighten the screws on all the processes, but doesn't that miss the core point that that this one obviously really stinks, and why didn't government officials, why did they think it was a good idea to give over $11 million to these two guys who did no IT work in exchange for their subcontracting services? So to really get at the nub of the issue, Ms. Gorman, why do you think they were hired?
I wasn't in the agency when they were hired. My understanding is that they had a standing offer that had been competed and established through public services and procurement, and whether I'm using the proper term, a standing offer or a supply arrangement for staff enhancements that the CBSA and other departments would use.
Okay, let me jump in though. So these guys had a great thing going then, clearly. Like if Stephanie and I said, hey, we got an idea, we're gonna open a firm in our garage, and we're gonna get hired by the government to do work, which we're then gonna get passed on to someone else, and we're gonna take 15 or 30% of it. What stops any two Canadians from doing that?
I'm seized with the contracting function in CBSA, and I have outlined how I'm addressing
but
the questions that you raised.
Let's take a step back and understand how this can happen.
Other departments who might be better placed to respond to that.
Okay, but clearly these two guys weren't just any two people. Clearly they had access to someone or something that allowed them to get paid by the government to do nothing. Is that not a reasonable inference? Mr. Doan, do you have a comment on this?
Who made the decision?
Those are allegations that have only come to light, to my knowledge, recently.
But it just doesn't make sense, right? Would you agree that it just doesn't make sense?
What doesn't make sense? My apologies.
Well, the fact that two people were paid over $11 million to do no work in subcontract.
The CBSA worked very closely with PSPC and all the rules governed by PSPC on all of these engagements.
Yeah, but this is sort of process mumbo jumbo. Like I think people would want to know. They got paid to do nothing. Why were they hired?
I believe.
Who made the decision? Let me just ask that. Who made the decision?
I believe, as my colleague at CBSA has said, that this is currently under investigation.
So you don't know who made the decision?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, so none of you know who made the decision to hire these two guys, according to your testimony?
I can say, based on memory, that my team made the decision.
Well, who?
Who made the final decision?
These people, they got paid $11 million as part of the $54 million for this app. Two people, and these people at the top of that company, they can't even tell you who those people are, or who made the decision to get those two people? Isn't that kind of strange?
At this time, it's my knowledge. I do not know, and it's part of the investigation that's currently underway.
Okay, so two guys got over $11 million from the government of Canada to do no work, and none of you know who made the decision to give them that contract, but you're currently investigating. I'm glad the RCMP and not just you are investigating.
It's shocking, right? It's shocking when you think of it. Like, you're talking about $54 million of tax dollars from Canadians that paid for this app that actually could have been done for about $250,000 over a couple of days by two dudes. That's how fast they did it. They could do it no problem. So what's with the $54 million? I just don't understand it. So we're just going to jump back to the House, where I believe Michael Garrett says a few things, and Larry Brock. I'll skip forward to where Larry Brock says a few things, and give you an idea what they said in the House after some of this scandalous things.
Reports reveal the RCMP couldn't pursue their criminal investigation against this Prime Minister and his SNC-Lavalin scandal because he was hiding secret documents from the federal police. If any other Canadian hid documents from the RCMP, they'd end up in jail. But after 8 years of this Liberal NDP government, this Prime Minister thinks that he's above the law, and Canadians know that he's not worth the cost. So what are the documents that are so damning that this Prime Minister is hiding them from the RCMP, and why are the NDP trying to help them get off the hook?
So he asked that question, and then the liberal fellow, he gets up and he spiels off some stuff, which is kind of nonsensical, but it's what they always do, because they never seem to answer a question. So here's Larry Brock a little bit later on. That's what he says.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this government's ongoing corruption, we have yet another scandal. Conflicts of interest, nepotism, abuse of power, and now we have allegations of criminality around the contracting practices in the top offices of this government. The $54 million price tag for the Arrive scam app is just the tip of the iceberg. Last week, the NDP-Liberal coalition voted to shut down the testimony of the Auditor General's review of this scandal. Why?
Great question, right? Why? Why do they do these things? Because, like I said, you got nothing to hide. Hide nothing. So here is Leo Housakis. He is a senator, and this is what Leo said the other day in regards to same kind of scandals.
Senator Gold, last week I asked Minister Duclos who at CBSA and at Procurement Canada is responsible for verifying outside consultants and subcontractors. And given the disturbing information we saw this morning in the Globe and Mail, where $54 million of taxpayers' money has been spent on a Arrive scam, spent on consultants who have not only fudged their CV, but fabricated expertise for companies that don't even exist. And given the fact that your government since 2015 has increased spending on outside subcontractors and consultants by 74%, how could you possibly justify this? And how can you tell this floor who is responsible in the Trudeau government for vetting these contracts? And at the end of the day, ArriveCan has become a fraud, has become a fiasco, and has become an Arrive scam. Now, who's accountable for this?
Somebody needs to be held accountable because, like I said, $54 million. I mean, come on. This is ridiculous. This is Canadian taxpayers' money being shot out the window at an app, and they've given it to, a couple of people. Who's responsible? People should lose their jobs. People should not be promoted. People should not get bonuses. They should be fired.
Senator Gold.
Well, vis-a-vis the troubling allegations surrounding...
Now, Gold here, Senator Gold, he is the mouthpiece for the Liberals, so he is, he likes to use word salad and all that fun stuff.
ArriveCan, as senators know, it is a matter of that is not only under investigation by the RCMP, but is also their internal investigation going on under the auspices of CBSA. It is also the case, colleagues, as you know, that the Minister Anand has recently announced new public service guidelines on outsourcing and procurement, on when they are required, and tools to mitigate risk to ensure that the processes are transparent and appropriate. And there's nothing more that I can comment on in terms of the ongoing investigations, except to say that they are ongoing, and both at the RCMP level and within CBSA, which is the appropriate place for those investigations to take place.
Senator Housakis.
No one's being held accountable, but we know there's all kinds of investigation because this whole thing stinks. Senator Gold, while we still have a lot to learn about the rot that is Arrive scam, one thing that is abundantly clear: hard-working, law-abiding, everyday Canadians are still facing an exorbitant amount of fines associated with this get-rich scheme for Liberal insiders. Canadians like Mr. Milad, a local tailor right here in Ottawa who is returning home from visiting his family in the Middle East and will now have to close his shop to travel to Montreal for a court date, costing him tons of money, Senator Gold. When will your government do the right thing while these investigations go on and at least cancel the outstanding ArriveCan fines that are being saddled on Canadians?
Senator Gold.
I'll certainly take your suggestion to the attention of the appropriate minister. I would not assume one way or the other that every violation...
And that just means nothing will get done because that's just word salad pretty much. So the other day, there was there's a gentleman he runs the Canadian Taxpayer Federation, looks after basically money, taxpayers' dollars, and looks out for the best interests of taxpayers. His name is Franco Terrazzano. Now I'm going to show you a little clip here of
The Canadian
Franco
taxpayer.
Terrazzano. He's talking. This about 6 or 7 months ago. He's just talking at one of the hearings. But he is the Canadian Taxpayers Federation chair or president, I guess you'd want to call him. But anyway, when he was at the RiveCan hearing yesterday, he basically said how serious the money that's being spent by taxpayers in this country. He said it'd be like you taking your car to the shop, and they turn around and they say, "Oh, to fix your car, it's going to be $800." You go, "Oh, $800, that's not bad." Then they call you back like 3 hours later, and they go, "Sorry, it's $8,000." And then you go, $8,000? It was $80 the other day. Now it's $8,000. And then they turn around then a couple of days later and go, "Yeah, it's 14 grand now to fix your car." You go, "What?" Well, this ArriveCan app, that's exactly what they did. They came out with a price at the very start. It wasn't very much. Then all of a sudden, boom, jumped up, and it went to like 18 million, and then now it's 54 million. Taxpayers should be outraged at this nonsense. But this is the problem. Taxpayers just listen to numbers, right? The Liberals say, "Oh, we gave $1 billion to the Ukraine," or that we gave $30 million to Taiwan, or we gave just money that's gone. Now, Canadians will be paying for this tax for years to come. Our great-great-great-grandkids will be paying for this tax because that's money plus interest that was just given away. That's no big deal because it's not their money. It's our money. It's taxpayers' money. You've worked hard for your money. You worked hard your whole life for this money, and you pay tax on everything and give it to that government. And that government turns around and spends it silly-nilly. And you may not know how much money is being spent. Well, I'm just going to show you a clip of Frank Terrazzano talking a little bit about what money's being spent on, and give you a bit better idea. Fire you up a little bit. Maybe you can fire off an email to your local MP.
Federation for 5 minutes of opening remarks. Mr. Terrazzano?
You're going to hear from hundreds of individuals and groups asking for more money. My name is Franco Terrazzano. I'm with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and I'm here on behalf of 235,000 Canadian taxpayers asking you to spend less. I'm here today to say no more spending $8,800 on a sex toy show in Germany. No more racking up nearly 6 figures on fancy airplane food during a week-long trip. No more giving former governors general a $200,000 a year expense account for the rest of their life. No more taking pay raise after pay raise after pay raise while millions of Canadians struggle through a pandemic. No more giving 300,000 bureaucrats a raise while their neighbors lose their job or business. No more giving failing crown corporations like the Bank of Canada millions in bonuses. No more announcing $295 million for the Ford Motor Company, $420 million for Goma Steel, $12 million for Loblaws, $20 million for Maple Leaf Foods, $110 million for Toyota, or announcing $372 million for Bombardier. Canadians need real relief. But Canadians are paying too much tax because the government wastes too much money. No wonder 72% of Canadians say they pay too much tax, according to a recent Ipsos poll released last week. 51 other national governments have cut taxes during the pandemic or to ease the pain of inflation. That includes more than half of G7 and G20 countries. 2/3 of OECD countries have also cut taxes during that time. While other countries cut taxes, Ottawa sticks Canadians with higher tax bills. The government has increased gas, payroll taxes, and alcohol taxes. The government is getting ready to impose a second carbon tax next year through fuel regulations. But Canadians cannot afford higher taxes, and we can't afford to waste more money covering interest charges on the government's credit card. The government isn't scheduled to balance the budget until 2041 under the current trajectory. That's according to recent PBO data. Interest charges over that period will have cost taxpayers $800 billion by 2041. That's a cost of $18,000 for every Canadian, and it's hundreds of billions of dollars that can't be used to improve services or lower taxes because that money is going to the bond fund managers on Bay Street. But there is some good news. The government could balance the budget next year. The government could also reverse its tax hikes, and the government could do that by bringing program spending back to the pre-pandemic and all-time high levels of 2018-19, adjusted upward for inflation and population growth. In 2018-19, the government spent more money than it did during any single year during World War II, even after accounting for inflation and population differences. That means the government overspent for years. So finding savings in every area of the budget should be like...
All right, so it's going to cut Frank a little bit short there. Gives you an idea of what I've just been saying in regards to taxation in this country. And he just gave you some ideas of what they've been spending money on, and it's ridiculous. Actually, Frank's the one that came up with just the other day in our house, and they were talking about $8 million barn that was built up in Ottawa. $8 million barn that was built. I'm not sure about you, but I've never seen an $8 million barn. But an $8 million barn was paid for by Canadian tax dollars, right? So these are the types of things that really kind of irk me. And believe me when I tell you, I fire off emails to my MP, and he knows who I am for sure. And more people need to do that. So anyway, that scandal there is the $54 million Arrive scam app. And there's going to be more of that to come, I'm sure, because they're going to get to the bottom of this. And hopefully they'll get to the bottom of the Lavalin scandal as well with the RCMP, as long as they don't keep getting shut out by the NDP coalition. So that's it for today's podcast, everyone. Before I sign off, remember what I always say, I can be also found on Rumble, and I can also be found on any Android or Apple application. Just type in The Surge Effect, and you will see my black symbol, TSA, with my microphone. And that's me. I'm also on social medias. And thank you very much for subscribing to my channel. It's much appreciated. And if you have not subscribed, please subscribe and like or share. Ring the little bell. Just click on that bell so every time that I post a new video, you'll be notified via email when you subscribe to my channel. And until I post another podcast, please have yourself a great day. Cheers.
This episode sponsored by He Shirts, She Shirts. Go to www.heshirtssheshirts.ca. Just type in the letters TSA, The Surge Effect. When you check out, type in TSA for your coupon and receive 10% off your next purchase. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, everybody.